Chapter 1, The Bus. Within the dense fog, an old, battered bus crawled forward along an endless, desolate highway. There were 7 people on the bus in total, 3 women, 4 men. They sat in silence, staring out the windows through the thick mist, each face reflecting a different emotion. Suspicion. Confusion. Fear. Yet beneath all of it, their complexions shared the same sickly pallor. It was as if, somewhere along the journey, they had already witnessed something unspeakably terrifying. The bus continued straight ahead, until at last it came to a stop before an ancient, time-worn mansion. Fog coiled around the building like a living thing. Its walls were pitch black, mysterious, sinister, and grotesque. The bus doors slid open, as though quietly informing the passengers inside. It was time to get off. The 7 stepped down slowly, scanning their surroundings, an indescribable dread flickering in their eyes. Because the driver's seat of the bus, where someone should have been, was completely empty. Yes. This bus had no driver. After the final person stepped off, the doors closed by themselves. The bus began to move again, rolling forward until it vanished into the thick fog. Standing before the blackened mansion, the 7 exchanged glances, seeing only the grim expressions reflected back at them. "Let's go. I don't think we have any other choice." At the critical moment, a thin man spoke up. He wore dark brown square-framed glasses, his delicate features unnervingly calm. Do we really have to go inside?" Diana, the beautiful woman wearing gold earrings, spoke with a trembling voice. She was dressed lightly and shivered from the cold, wrapping her arms around herself and rubbing them over and over. "What if it isn't safe in there?" No one answered. At first, they had all thought this was some cruel prank, or perhaps a staged reality show inviting them to participate. But when they discovered there was no driver on the bus, they had all been firm materialists before this. But what they had experienced defied imagination. "So you'd rather walk into the fog?" Chris Hemsworth took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. In truth, his heart was pounding wildly. From the moment he received that mysterious letter to arriving here, less than an hour had passed. Yet that single hour had utterly shattered his worldview. "Have you already forgotten the fat man who jumped off the bus at the intersection earlier?" At the mention of him, terror instantly flooded the woman's eyes. Her legs went weak, she nearly collapsed. Earlier, there had been 8 people on the bus. They had all appeared there suddenly after falling asleep. Among them was a fat man who complained non-stop, insisting this had to be some inhumane TV show setup. Impatiently, he claimed their phones had been swapped, that the driver was hidden beneath the bus, and that the fog was nothing more than carefully manufactured dry ice. Eventually, when the bus stopped at an intersection, the fat man forced open a window and jumped out, disappearing alone into the fog. Up to that point, everything still seemed, barely, within reason. But at the next intersection, they saw something hanging from the traffic light pole, half obscured by fog. As the bus slowly approached, they finally saw it clearly. What hung there was the blood-soaked skin of the fat man who had left earlier. It had been peeled off whole. They could even see his twisted, frozen expression of terror, as though he had seen something unimaginably horrifying just before he died. Fresh blood continued to drip from the traffic light. The scene shattered everyone's composure. Someone, refusing to believe it, pulled open a window, and the stench of blood rushed inside, so strong it made them retch. Remembering that moment, everyone's faces turned deathly pale. "No one dares to go near that fog anymore," Chris Hemsworth said quietly. "So the only place left is this black mansion." He took another deep breath. He was afraid too. But for reasons he couldn't explain, whether it was the sight of the flayed skin or the overwhelming smell of blood, his reaction had been far milder than the others. More than that, he was deeply intrigued by the mysterious letter. What did its sender truly want to tell him? Led by Chris Hemsworth, the group pushed open the iron gate and entered the mansion's front garden. It was silent. terrifyingly silent. They instinctively huddled closer together. The woman with gold earrings felt someone groping her, but she merely frowned and said nothing. Let them touch. Anything was better than being skinned alive for no reason. They reached the mansion's door. Chris Hemsworth knocked. Knock. 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 Footsteps hurried from inside. The people behind him retreated several steps, staring at the door in mounting panic. Click. The door opened. But the horrifying scene they had imagined did not appear. Instead, standing there was an exquisitely beautiful youth, no more than 15 or 16. You're here. Come in. Only then did they realize, he was a boy. A very beautiful boy. His voice, however, was cold and emotionless. They watched Chris Hemsworth follow him inside, hesitating among themselves. You'd better come in quickly. The boy's voice echoed again from within. That fog is extremely dangerous. The word fog was enough. Thinking of the fat man's gruesome death, they rushed inside in panic. The mansion was spacious, decorated in a classical style. Bookshelves lined the left wall. A wooden staircase rose on the right. In the center sat 3 large sofas. Between them, a brazier burned with glowing embers. 4 people sat around it, staring into the flames in silence. The air grew colder with every passing second. Excuse me, why were we brought here? Where is this place? What is that fog, and what was that bus? After a pause, Chris Hemsworth finally asked. No one answered. The 4 by the fire didn't even glance at him. Behind Chris Hemsworth, Eric Church, the bearded man, lost his patience. I'm talking to you. What, are you all mute? His booming voice echoed painfully through the room. At last, the man in the suit sitting opposite Chris Hemsworth spoke. I know you have many questions. If you can survive returning from the first blood door, I'll answer them. A bad feeling instantly gripped everyone. Blood door? What is that? Chris Hemsworth asked, recalling the earlier mysterious phone call. The man in the suit didn't lift his head. He pointed toward the 3rd floor. You don't have much time. In less than 5 minutes, the blood door will open. You will enter the terrifying world beyond it and complete the task written on the door. Once the task is finished, the bus will come to retrieve you. After he finished speaking, Mary, the petite, thin woman with a ponytail, asked weakly. What if we fail? The man in the suit slowly raised his head. His calm, icy gaze made Mary break out in a cold sweat. You will die. And it will be extremely brutal. Their legs went weak. They wanted desperately to believe this was a joke. But the man's solemn expression crushed their last shred of hope. Can we choose not to go? A blonde-haired young man swallowed hard. The man in the suit glanced at him. Yes. But then, you'd better never fall asleep again. The blonde man froze. Why? The man gave a faint smile. Because if you don't enter the blood door, something from behind it will come looking for you. No matter where you run, it will find you. And then. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Chris Hemsworth looked toward the 3rd floor and asked. Before we go, do you have any advice? Studying him. Seeing Chris Hemsworth's unnatural calm, a trace of admiration flickered in his eyes. Advice, yes. Although the stories beyond the blood door are extremely dangerous, there is always more than one path to survival. Find the correct path, and completing the task, surviving, won't be impossible. Chris Hemsworth nodded. Thank you. He turned, and was the first to head upstairs. Seeing his decisiveness, Eric Church clenched his teeth and followed. Damn it, kid, you've got some guts, he muttered. Truthfully, Eric Church had noticed him from the start. When the skin was discovered. When the stench of blood filled the bus. Chris Hemsworth barely reacted. Guts? Chris Hemsworth laughed bitterly. Do you think we have any other choice? Eric Church was tall, even a step lower, he was only slightly shorter. When you saw that skin earlier, kid, you didn't even blink. What did you do before? What job? Assassin. You read too many novels. There aren't that many assassins in real life. Oh. Then what are you? I'm a doctor. Oh, no wonder. Forensic? Close. Veterinarian. Eric Church. They stopped talking as they reached the third floor. The smell hit them immediately, thick blood mixed with the stench of rotting wood. The entire floor was empty. Except for a single wooden door, stained red with blood. On it were written the words. Take care of a bedridden elderly person for 5 days. So this is our task, Chris Hemsworth said softly. One by one, the others arrived, staring at the words in stunned silence. That's it. Just that. Diana whispered in disbelief. As they murmured among themselves, they all suddenly froze. A presence. Something from behind the door. Crack, crack. Something was pushing from inside. Moments later, a pair of pale hands forced the blood-stained wooden door open. Chapter 2, The Abandoned Villa District. When they regained consciousness, all of them were already standing beyond the blood-stained wooden door. They had been scattered throughout a beautiful suburban villa district. Yet something was deeply wrong. Despite the exquisite construction and elegant layout, the place felt gloomy, steeped in deathly stillness. After passing several villas, Chris Hemsworth confirmed one thing. This entire district was uninhabited. Silent to a terrifying degree. Is no one living here, or did everyone just go out to work? Chris Hemsworth studied the surroundings carefully, as if he had noticed something off. No, that's not right. The gardens show signs of recent maintenance. There are goldfish in the ponds. Tools are left out in the yards, things people use every day. This place should be lived in. So where did everyone go? A trace of unease crept into Chris Hemsworth's mind as he continued forward. Soon, he spotted the villa they were supposed to enter. It was easy to identify. Because in the entire district, only this villa had someone standing outside. A well-dressed, elegant woman stood beneath the blazing sun, a suitcase in hand. She wore a sun hat adorned with a small rose and held the hand of a little girl, about 8 or 9 years old. She simply stood there in the courtyard, smiling gently at those approaching. Her smile was beautiful, one that seemed more charming the longer you looked. And yet, for reasons he couldn't explain, Chris Hemsworth felt a chill crawl up his spine as he looked at it. That smile didn't feel like a welcome. It felt more like. Lost in thought, Chris Hemsworth suddenly felt a large hand clap down on his shoulder. He jolted, turning around to see Eric Church, the bearded man. Hey, kid. You made it too. Chris Hemsworth nodded. Yeah. Looks like that villa is where we're supposed to go. Eric Church glanced at it from afar, his expression growing grim. He began counting on his fingers, muttering under his breath. Bad, very bad. Seeing this, Chris Hemsworth's eyes lit up. You read fortunes? Eric Church shook his head. Out there, I do tell fortunes for people. But I just remembered, I actually don't know how. I'm just a con artist. Chris Hemsworth choked on his breath. Speechless. This guy was something else. Had he lied for so long that even he believed it? And more importantly, how could he admit something like that so shamelessly? All right then. Chris Hemsworth sighed helplessly and walked straight toward the woman's villa. Some people had arrived before him. The lady of the house didn't engage in conversation, she only smiled. That detached smile made them uneasy. Whenever they asked her something, she replied with just one sentence. Please wait a moment. There are still a few caretakers who haven't arrived yet. About 10 minutes later, all 7 of them were finally present. As if some condition had been met, the woman, who had only been smiling all this time, finally spoke. "Everyone's here now, correct? I'm terribly sorry for asking you all to come take care of my mother. My husband is away for work, and I want to take my daughter to the seaside for her birthday. There's truly no one left at home. My mother is elderly, she's bedridden, and her mental faculties have declined significantly. I was worried that 2 or 3 caretakers wouldn't be enough, so I decided to hire all of you from the company. As for payment, please don't worry. Money is not an issue for me. When I return, if my mother has been well cared for, I'll give everyone an additional reward." With that, she led them into the villa, up to the 2nd floor, and into a spacious room. The room was dim. And inside lingered an unpleasant odor. Lay an elderly woman with a gentle appearance, calmly observing Chris Hemsworth and the others. A barely perceptible, eerie smile hung on her face. It made everyone's skin crawl. "This is my mother," the woman said. She sat down beside the old woman and spoke tenderly. "Mom, I'm taking Maya to the seaside for her birthday. I've specially hired 7 caretakers for you. For these 5 days, they'll take good care of you." After speaking, she leaned close to the old woman's ear and whispered something. Then she stood, turned to the group, and smiled. "Although my mother is bedridden and a bit confused, she can still understand simple things. And overall, she's quite healthy, no other illnesses. Her appetite is good. Oh, right. I haven't shown you the kitchen yet." She led them downstairs to the kitchen. It was large and fully equipped. All the cookware was spotless. To the left of the entrance stood 2 large refrigerators. It's summer now, and the rainy season is coming. Maya is very afraid of heavy storms. There may be typhoons over the next 5 days, so buying groceries could be inconvenient. As she spoke, she opened one of the refrigerators. Inside were neatly packed meats and vegetables. Smiling, she said. "But you don't need to worry. I've prepared enough food and water for all of you. And one more thing. My mother doesn't like vegetables. When cooking for her, please make more meat." After saying this, she didn't rush to leave. Instead, she asked, "Do you have any other questions?" Chris Hemsworth spoke first. "May I ask, does no one else live in this villa district?" The woman paused briefly, then smiled calmly. "That's right. This district was built quite some time ago. But it's too remote. Apart from us, no one else lives here. Actually, if it weren't for my mother, we wouldn't live here either. For these 5 days, treat yourselves as the owners of this villa. I've prepared rooms for you on the 2nd floor. You may choose whichever you like. But there is one thing you must remember. Absolutely, do not go to the 3rd floor. Do you understand?" As she said this, her expression suddenly turned extremely serious. Everyone replied in unison, "Understood." Seeing their agreement, the lady of the house smiled once more. "Good. Then I'll entrust my mother to you. Oh, our ride is about to leave. I need to go with my daughter now, or we'll miss the high-speed train." She hurriedly slipped on her high heels, walked to the door, took her daughter's hand, grabbed her suitcase, and left. An uneasy feeling gnawed at Chris Hemsworth. He walked to the window and watched them depart. Just as the woman was getting into the car, the little girl she was holding suddenly turned her head. Her gaze met Chris Hemsworth's through the window. That look froze him in place. His eyesight was excellent. And clearly, undeniably, he saw fear in the girl's eyes. She was terrified. But of what? The seaside? Her mother? Or this villa? As Chris Hemsworth pondered, Eric Church strode over again and said, "What are you staring at? They're gone already. Kid, didn't expect you to be this young and already into married women. Not bad. Not bad at all. You've got potential. Chapter 3, The Scream. After the lady of the villa left, everyone returned to the main hall. Following brief self-introductions, they began discussing how to take care of the elderly woman. Among them, Mary, the petite, thin girl with a ponytail, weakly raised her small hand. Can I ask, how did everyone end up on the bus? I was playing on my phone on a high-speed train, someone said. I got sleepy, fell asleep, and when I woke up, I was already on the bus. Same here. I was working overtime at the office. Suddenly felt incredibly sleepy. One by one, they spoke, only to realize that everyone's experience was exactly the same. The eerie coincidence made their already fragile nerves tighten even further. Damn it, Eric Church cursed under his breath. This really is running into ghosts. Mary fell silent for a moment, then said weakly. Do you think this could still be some kind of show? Maybe they used this method to invite us onto a reality program. I've seen things like this on TV before. Before she could finish, Eric Church cut in with a cold laugh. You forgot about the fat guy already? What TV show skins people alive? Mary trembled violently, yet still clung to denial. What if that was just a prop? Props? Was the blood a prop too? Who knows, maybe it was chicken blood, dog blood. She was desperately trying to deceive herself, but Chris Hemsworth's calm voice shattered her last line of defense. That wasn't animal blood. Everyone turned to look at him. He seemed to have accepted all of this, his expression unnervingly steady. I used to be a veterinarian. I'm very sensitive to smells. The blood of cats, dogs, pigs, goats, cattle, chickens, ducks, fish, geese, pigeons, and human blood, are all distinctly different. For example, goat's blood reeks. Human blood has a sharp, unmistakable metallic stench. I can say this with certainty, the blood on that traffic light pole was human blood. And it was fresh. As soon as he finished speaking, Mary collapsed inward, trembling violently, hugging her knees and sobbing. Stop, please stop. I beg you, don't say any more. Seeing her like this, Chris Hemsworth softened his tone. It wasn't surprising she was terrified. Any ordinary person, after witnessing something like that, would carry psychological scars for a long time. Only those who regularly dealt with corpses could remain relatively calm. After all, that scene had been far too bloody. For now, Chris Hemsworth said, it's best to focus on surviving these 5 days. Calyx, a plain-looking man about 170 centimeters tall with sharp, restless eyes, spoke up. There are 7 of us. The task is to take care of a bedridden elderly woman for 5 days. How should we divide the work? They exchanged glances. When no one spoke, Chris Hemsworth said. Then the 3 women can handle cooking and laundry. The 4 of us men will take care of the elderly woman. Before he finished, Diana, the beautiful woman with gold earrings, let out a mocking laugh. Oh. So women are supposed to cook and wash clothes for you smelly men? You really know how to be lazy. You heard the lady say the old woman is bedridden and can't move, so you're all rushing to take care of her, huh? Do you think we're idiots? Taking care of her probably means doing nothing, just sitting around, right? At her words, Eric Church immediately snapped. Damn, for such a pretty woman, your mouth sure smells like shit. Diana's face darkened. Who are you cursing? Eric Church was about to continue when Chris Hemsworth cut in. If you don't want to cook and do laundry, I can switch with you. You take care of the elderly woman, from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. At night, when it's dark, we'll wash up and rest. Diana stared at him, then snorted coldly. Well then, thanks. Her tone carried no gratitude at all, only sarcasm. Oh, right. It's already past 5. Aren't you going to cook? I'm hungry. Go on. Chris Hemsworth looked at her deeply, said nothing, then turned to the other two women. Do either of you want to switch? Adolphe, who had been silent the entire time, raised her hand. I'm sorry. I really don't know how to cook. Compared to Diana's hostility, Adolphe seemed far more sincere. In modern society, many people, men and women alike, grow up never learning to cook. It wasn't strange. Does anyone else know how? Chris Hemsworth asked. The remaining three men hesitated. Finally, Eric Church sighed loudly. All right. I'll cook and do laundry with you. What a useless bunch, can't even cook or wash clothes. Diana said coldly. Hey, you brute. Watch your mouth. Eric Church glared at her, pointing. If I didn't have a rule about not hitting women, you'd be dead today. Diana sneered, her high heels clicking sharply as she headed upstairs. The kitchen was on the first floor. The elderly woman was on the second. The villa was enormous. Everyone split up to handle their tasks. Eric Church followed Chris Hemsworth into the kitchen, still fuming. Mary came with them, quietly sobbing. All right, Chris Hemsworth said, finally cutting him off. Enough with the insults. You can really put up with that? Eric Church glared. Chris Hemsworth opened the refrigerator and began taking out ingredients. Do you really think taking care of that elderly woman is a good thing? Eric Church froze. What do you mean, kid? Chris Hemsworth slowly turned around, looking at Eric Church and Mary. Do you remember what the man in the suit said? He said they'd only answer our questions after we survived the blood door. That means the world behind the blood door contains unimaginable danger. Mary's small body began trembling again. What kind of danger? Chris Hemsworth shook his head. Hard to say. But if the task is to take care of the elderly, the danger is connected to her. In short, be careful. Hearing this, Eric Church glanced around, secretly counting on his fingers again. The gloom on his face vanished, replaced by a sly grin. Kid, you're right. I'll stick with you. Chris Hemsworth looked at him in mild surprise, then shook his head, saying nothing more. He took out vegetables, then glanced toward the freezer. Just as the lady had said, it was filled with meat. Each portion neatly cut, sealed in separate bags. Chris Hemsworth took out one labeled beef ribs, tossed it into a pot, and set it to thaw. As he closed the freezer, something caught his attention. He pulled out another frozen package. Inside the meat were many black, unknown substances. The frost was too thick, the vacuum-sealed bag too opaque, it was impossible to tell what those black patches were. There was no label on the package. Perhaps the lady of the house had forgotten. Chris Hemsworth stared at it for a moment. Eric Church leaned over. Why's that meat so dark? I don't know, Chris Hemsworth said, placing it back. Probably freezer burn. It's gone bad. The three worked in the kitchen. To Chris Hemsworth's surprise, Eric Church, this rough, foul-mouthed man, was actually an excellent cook. His movements were practiced and efficient. Dinner's ready. Eric Church shouted, carrying the dishes to the table. Without waiting for anyone upstairs, he grabbed a bowl of hot rice and began shoveling food into his mouth. Watching him eat like a starving ghost, Mary couldn't help asking. Aren't we waiting for them? Waiting for what? Eric Church snapped. Eat. He continued devouring his food. Tap. 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 Footsteps came from upstairs. Diana appeared on the staircase, seeing Eric Church hunched over his bowl. She sneered. Look at the way you eat, like a hungry ghost reborn. Normally, Eric Church would have exploded. He was strangely focused, completely ignoring her. Diana assumed he was scared and sat down to eat as well. The meal passed in silence. No one knew what to say. Their vision gradually blurred, until they could barely see the beef in their bowls. Only when Chris Hemsworth stood up and turned on the lights did they realize, night had fallen. Damn it! How did it get dark so fast? It's not even 7 yet. A man named Lux exclaimed, his shock making everyone uncomfortable. What's your name again? Calyx asked coldly. Didn't the lady say the rainy season is coming? It gets dark early. What's so strange about that? Lux was a bit too agitated, but everyone understood why. No one pressed the issue. The atmosphere in the villa was suffocating. Hey, hey. So this is how you take care of the elderly? You stuff yourselves while a bedridden old woman starves upstairs. Is that reasonable? Did someone really think taking care means doing nothing? After finishing his meal, Eric Church set down his bowl, picked his teeth, and mocked Diana. Her fists clenched, her gaze turning icy. Humph. You think everyone's a pig like you? Disgusting. Like a maggot. She kicked her heels in annoyance, scooped leftovers from everyone's plates into a bowl, and went upstairs. As her figure disappeared into the pitch-black hallway, for some reason, everyone felt their hearts tighten. Were you all on the second floor just now? Chris Hemsworth asked the three assigned to the elderly woman. Calyx nodded. We searched the entire second floor. Aside from the bedridden old woman, there's no one else. Our rooms are directly across from hers, same corridor. Anything unusual? Chris Hemsworth then replied. There's a smell, very strange. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely not pleasant. All 7 rooms? Chris Hemsworth asked. Yes. Every one. At this point, Adolf added softly. There's something else that's strange. All the rooms the lady prepared for us have private bathrooms. Lux scoffed. So what? She's rich. Doesn't want guests running around to use the toilet. Chris Hemsworth raised an eyebrow. No, it is strange. This villa is clearly only meant for her family. Even if her husband lived here, that's 4 people at most. Why prepare so many bedrooms and bathrooms? Well, maybe they're just very hospitable. Rich people like hosting parties, don't they? Lux's voice wavered. No one responded. Silence fell again. Until, a shrill, piercing scream tore through the oppressive stillness from the second floor. Chapter 4, Bland Meat. The sudden scream shattered the silence of the villa. Everyone immediately turned toward the second floor. What happened? I don't know. Go check it out. They rushed upstairs, straight to the source of the scream. It was the room of the bedridden old woman. Diana, the woman who had carried the food upstairs earlier, was now collapsed on the floor, her back pressed into the corner, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, shaking uncontrollably. The steaming hot food lay spilled across the floor. What happened? Chris Hemsworth asked. Before everyone's eyes, Diana slowly raised a trembling finger and pointed at the old woman on the bed. She, just now, she spoke. Following her finger, everyone looked toward the old woman lying motionless on the bed, her vacant eyes fixed on the window. Eric Church burst out laughing. That's it? I thought something serious happened. Didn't the lady of the house say it already? Her mother is just paralyzed. Bedridden, not a vegetable. Why wouldn't she be able to talk? And here I thought you were tough. A paralyzed old woman scared you that badly? At last, Eric Church found his chance, his mouth firing non-stop like a machine gun. But Diana looked genuinely terrified, trembling so badly she couldn't even argue back. Chris Hemsworth glanced at the old woman, motioned for Eric Church to clean the floor, then bent down and helped Diana up. She spilled it herself and now I have to clean it. What kind of nonsense is this? Eric Church muttered, but still obediently went to the bathroom for a rag and began wiping. The scene felt strangely discordant. Eric Church didn't look like someone easy to push around, yet he listened to Chris Hemsworth without complaint. No one asked why. After the room was cleaned, Chris Hemsworth stepped to the bedside, carefully examined the old woman's gentle, aged face, pulled the blanket up for her, then turned and left with the others. Back on the first floor, night had fully fallen. The lights illuminated the grand hall. Yet somehow, everyone felt as though they were still standing in pitch darkness. The silence was suffocating. "All right," Chris Hemsworth said calmly, sitting across from Diana on the sofa and pouring himself a cup of hot tea. "Now you can tell us, what exactly did the old woman say?" At the mention of it, Diana's face, which had just regained a hint of color, instantly went pale again. Her fingers clenched the hem of her clothes. "Just now. I was feeding her." She took one bite of the beef ribs, then spat it out. Eric Church's eyes widened. "Damn it, did she throw up? Was my cooking really that bad?" Chris Hemsworth frowned. "Eric Church. Let her finish first." Eric Church clicked his tongue, muttered under his breath, and fell silent. Fear flickered in Diana's eyes. Her expression twisted, as if she didn't want to relive the moment. "I thought it was too hot, so I tasted it myself. It wasn't hot at all. So I fed her another bite, but she spat it out again. And this time, after she spat it out, she turned her head and stared straight at me and said. She hesitated for a long time. Calix's brows knitted so tightly they could have crushed a mosquito. "What did she say?" "Hurry up." Urged by him, Diana finally clenched her teeth and forced the words out. Her voice was very soft. I couldn't hear clearly, but it sounded like, "The meat has no flavor." Yes, she definitely said the meat was bland. The moment her words fell, a terrifying bolt of lightning tore across the window, followed instantly by a deafening thunderclap. Everyone jumped in fright. Holy shit, that thunder. Chris Hemsworth stared at the pitch-black sky outside, then suddenly walked over and opened the window. Cold wind and rain slapped against his face. "It's raining, heavy rain." He shut the window, his expression far more serious now. "These things, they're starting to come true. That letter, it really wasn't a joke." Unlike the others, Chris Hemsworth had received a mysterious letter before boarding the bus. He had kept that secret to himself. While the others whispered nervously about the bland meat, Chris Hemsworth sealed the window tightly, no gap left for wind. "All right. If she won't eat, then so be it," he said. "It's late. Let's rest. Tomorrow morning, we'll get up early and cook meat porridge for her. Have you chosen your rooms?" The discussion abruptly died. "Do we really have to sleep separately?" Adolph spoke up softly, fear clear on her face. Calix replied. "We checked the rooms. They're big, clean, with double beds. 2 people per room is fine." Mary's eyes were still puffy. Hearing that they'd be sharing rooms, she said anxiously. But there are 3 girls." Calix sighed. "The rooms are spacious. You're all small, squeeze in a bit, and it'll work." The 3 girls exchanged glances. None of them liked the idea of sharing a bed with strangers. But deep down, they all knew. This villa was not safe. It felt as if something in the darkness was watching them. After turning off the lights, they went upstairs together. Chris Hemsworth and Eric Church entered a room first. The 3 girls took the last room on the right side of the second-floor hallway, far from the old woman they were supposed to care for. The remaining 2 men chose the room next to Chris Hemsworth's. For some reason, Chris Hemsworth seemed to possess a strange gravitational pull. Being near him made people feel safer. The last person to head to her room was Diana. Still dazed from what had happened earlier, she lagged behind as everyone else entered their rooms. Soon, she was alone in the hallway. The hallway light switch was at the top of the stairs, only one switch. Their rooms, however, were at the very end of the corridor, at least 20 meters away. To turn off the lights meant walking those 20 meters in total darkness. Her gaze drifted to the open window at the end of the hallway. The trees outside twisted like demons, their branches writhing violently in the cold wind, as if they were about to crawl inside and devour her whole. She shuddered. Not daring to turn off the light, she hurried into the last room and slammed the door shut. Bang! Inside their room, Chris Hemsworth took off his shirt, revealing a solid, muscular body. Eric Church, brushing his teeth, stared in shock. Damn, Chris, so you were hiding this? With a body like that, six-pack and all, if you went to a bar, rich ladies would fight over you. Eric Church laughed and winked. Chris Hemsworth rolled his eyes. Then why do you keep sticking with me? Eric Church spat out toothpaste, dropped his joking expression, and said seriously. Kid, you're cautious. But I can't tell you yet. When we make it back alive from the blood gate. I'll explain. Chris Hemsworth was briefly surprised, then smiled. Eric still acting mysterious, changed the subject. By the way, don't you think there's something wrong with that old woman? Chris Hemsworth pondered for a moment. Not just her. This entire family, this whole villa, something's wrong. Eric Church froze. What's wrong with the villa? The lady of the house said only her family lives here, Chris Hemsworth replied. But I walked past many villas earlier. Inside, there were clear signs of recent habitation, within the last month or two. I saw at least 8 like that. Not counting the ones I didn't see. That means, not long ago, people were still living here. A chill ran down Eric Church's spine. If Chris Hemsworth was right, then where did those people go? Chris Hemsworth walked to the window, hands in his pockets. Also, someone living alone wouldn't buy a villa with such a huge garden. So whoever moved here likely had family or friends. Even if they went to work, the house wouldn't be completely empty. But now, it seems this entire complex only has us left. He raised a finger. Following it, Eric Church saw more than 10 villas outside the window, all completely dark. Not a single light. What the hell? His face turned grim. Something definitely happened here, Chris Hemsworth said slowly. Something terrifying. He carefully checked the window, locked it tight, drew the curtains, and returned to bed. No wind. Yet lying there, both of them smelled something strange. What's that smell? Eric Church asked. It wasn't strong, but it lingered, refusing to fade. Like something rotting. They remembered what Calix had said earlier. After searching, they finally found the source. The wooden ceiling above their heads. It was damp. Some kind of liquid was seeping through. Yellowish-brown. And foul-smelling. Fuck. Eric Church gagged and dragged the bed a little farther away. What is that? Chris Hemsworth narrowed his eyes at the stain for a long time. Then he said. Bearded one, do you trust me? Eric Church didn't understand, but nodded. I do. Chris Hemsworth spoke quietly. Tonight, don't sleep. Don't turn on the lights. No matter what you hear, ignore it. Eric Church's body stiffened. You mean something's going to happen tonight? After a long silence, Chris Hemsworth gave a barely perceptible nod. He turned off the light. The room sank into terrifying, absolute darkness. Eric Church lay on the bed, his heart racing. He tried to stay awake. But as time dragged on, exhaustion crept in. He didn't know how long passed before a strange sound woke him. It came from outside the door. A sound like 2 sharp metal objects scraping against each other. Scrape, scrape. The sound made his scalp crawl. Instantly, his mind jumped to knives and forks. As someone who cooked often, he knew that sound all too well. Eric Church jolted upright, reaching to turn on the light. Then remembered Chris Hemsworth's warning. His hand froze midair and dropped. "Chris, are you there?" he whispered. Chapter 5, The Second Day. Inside the room, a suffocating silence spread like a curse. Combined with the lingering stench rotting in the air, both men felt a chill seep from their scalps down to their bones. Drip. A drop of liquid fell beside them, splashing onto the floor. The sound itself wasn't loud. But in a room drowned in absolute silence, it was amplified endlessly. Chris Hemsworth could even feel Eric Church beside him shudder violently as the unknown liquid hit the floor. Brother Chris." Eric Church's voice trembled as he slowly raised his hand, as if reaching for something. Chris Hemsworth took a deep breath. "Don't turn on the light. If you don't want to die." Eric Church froze. Why? Chris Hemsworth shook his head. "I can't explain it yet. Just remember this, wherever there's airflow, don't turn on the lights. And if you do, stay far away." Only then did Eric Church suddenly recall, every time Chris Hemsworth passed a window, he always shut it tightly at the end. A bone-deep cold washed over him. His eyes drifted toward the gap beneath the door, and he cursed silently. Which bastard had gone into the last room and forgotten to turn off the hallway lights? After that, neither of them could sleep anymore. They no longer cared about the discomfort of sharing a bed, huddling together as if each other's warmth could offer the slightest comfort. Time blurred. Sometime later, the window outside slowly brightened, and the rain softened. Eric Church checked his watch. 8 a.m. Dim light filtered through the window. Outside was still gloomy, but at least they could see. His gaze fell on a puddle of liquid on the floor to his left. The dripping sound from the night before had come from here. Eric Church got out of bed, crouched down, stared at the stain, then leaned closer and sniffed. GHK. The overpowering stench nearly made him vomit. Chris Hemsworth noticed and crouched beside him. His expression shifted slightly. "This is?" Eric Church asked urgently. "What is it?" After a moment of silence, Chris Hemsworth spoke slowly. "Corpse fluid. Also called corpse oil. When an animal decomposes to an advanced stage, fat liquefies and leaks out." Enough. Eric Church cut him off in horror. "Don't say any more. I get it." His face turned deathly pale as he looked up. The damp stain on the wooden ceiling had spread, from the size of a fist to nearly the size of a human head. God only knew what was above them. As Eric Church's thoughts spiraled, two piercing screams from women suddenly erupted outside the door. The two men exchanged looks. Something had happened. "Let's go." Chris Hemsworth opened the door and rushed out, Eric Church close behind. The moment Chris Hemsworth stepped into the hallway, his brows furrowed. The smell of blood was overwhelming. A trail of fresh blood stretched from the last room down the hallway, all the way to the stairs. The screams came from the window at the end of the corridor. A crowd had already gathered. Chris Hemsworth and Eric Church pushed through and saw Adolf and Mary collapsed on the floor by their door, bodies trembling violently, faces drained of color. Beside them lay a large pool of blood. And vomit. "What happened?" Chris Hemsworth asked gravely. The two girls looked at him with eyes filled with absolute terror, as if they had just witnessed something unimaginably horrific. Their lips quivered. No words came out. They only pointed toward their room, tears streaming down. Chris Hemsworth turned toward the door, about to open it, when Kalik stopped him. His face was ghastly pale. "Inside, it's horrifying." Chris Hemsworth glanced at him, brushed his hand aside, first shut the nearby window tightly. Then opened the door. The moment the scene inside was revealed, everyone outside stopped breathing. His expression shifted slightly. "This is?" Eric Church asked urgently. "What is it?" After a moment of silence, Chris Hemsworth spoke slowly. Corpse fluid. Also called corpse oil. When an animal decomposes to an advanced stage, fat liquefies and leaks out. Enough, enough. Eric Church cut him off in horror. Don't say any more. I get it. His face turned deathly pale as he looked up. The damp stain on the wooden ceiling had spread, from the size of a fist to nearly the size of a human head. God only knew what was above them. As Eric Church's thoughts spiraled, 2 piercing screams from women suddenly erupted outside the door. The 2 men exchanged looks. Something had happened. Let's go. Chris Hemsworth opened the door and rushed out, Eric Church close behind. The moment Chris Hemsworth stepped into the hallway, his brows furrowed. The smell of blood was overwhelming. A trail of fresh blood stretched from the last room down the hallway, all the way to the stairs. The screams came from the window at the end of the corridor. A crowd had already gathered. Chris Hemsworth and Eric Church pushed through and saw Adolf and Mary collapsed on the floor by their door, bodies trembling violently, faces drained of color. Beside them lay a large pool of blood. And vomit. What happened? Chris Hemsworth asked gravely. The 2 girls looked at him with eyes filled with absolute terror, as if they had just witnessed something unimaginably horrific. Their lips quivered. No words came out. They only pointed toward their room, tears streaming down. Chris Hemsworth turned toward the door, about to open it, when Kalik stopped him. His face was ghastly pale. Inside, it's horrifying. Chris Hemsworth glanced at him, brushed his hand aside, first shut the nearby window tightly. Then opened the door. The moment the scene inside was revealed, everyone outside to the door lay a blood-soaked corpse. It was Diana. She was dead. Suppressing the choking stench of blood, Chris Hemsworth stepped inside. Only then did he truly see the body. Even he nearly vomited. The corpse lay on the bed. The head was intact, her pale neck long and slender. But from the neck down, the body had been brutally torn apart. Red muscle exposed in chaos. Wounds everywhere. The internal organs were gone. Large portions of muscle had been smashed, ripped, scattered. But the most horrifying part was her face. Her eyes were closed. There was no trace of pain. Instead, a twisted, eerie smile remained on her lips. Holy shit. Eric Church stumbled in behind him, eyes bulging, legs shaking so badly he nearly pissed himself. This. Only now did he understand why the 2 girls outside had collapsed. Forget women, even he was barely holding it together. Chris Hemsworth forced down the nausea and stepped closer to the body. No one else dared enter the room. It was too terrifying. After examining the corpse for a moment, Chris Hemsworth suddenly remembered something. His face changed instantly. He spun around and rushed out. Brother Chris, what is it? Eric Church followed without hesitation. No one dared stay on the 2nd floor. They all ran downstairs to the kitchen. Chris Hemsworth stared at the cutlery rack on the wall for a long time. Then he muttered. One set is missing. Lux, pale with fear, asked quickly. Missing, what set? Chris Hemsworth spoke slowly, clearly. A steak knife and fork. At those words, Eric Church's body jolted. The metallic scraping sound he had heard in the hallway last night. He had thought it sounded exactly like cutlery. Could it be? A terrifying thought struck him, and his whole body trembled. How does a missing set of cutlery relate to that corpse? Lux still didn't understand. Chris Hemsworth slowly turned his head and stared at them. Every word he spoke sent a chill down their spines. The wounds on Diana's body. They were caused by a knife and fork. Faces went deathly white. And, Chris Hemsworth, are you sure? Chris Hemsworth ignored Lux and asked the two girls. "Last night, did either of you hear Diana screaming for help?" Both girls shook their heads violently. "No, we were too sleepy. We fell asleep quickly." At that moment, Calyx clenched his teeth and spoke with a strange expression. I heard something last night." "Heard what?" "The sound of metal scraping. Thinking back now, it really sounded like knives and forks." Chris Hemsworth exchanged a glance with Eric Church. Then he said, "Go cook some porridge. Add plenty of meat. I'm going upstairs to check on the old woman." Eric Church nodded. "Be careful." "What about us?" someone asked. "Come with me." Mary stayed behind with Eric Church to cook. Chris Hemsworth led the others upstairs to the room of the bedridden old woman. The moment they entered, everyone froze. On the table beside the old woman's bed, lay a gleaming set of knife and fork. The missing one. As if sensing their presence, the old woman slowly turned her head and smiled gently at them. "Ah!" Adolf screamed in terror and staggered back downstairs. Lux and Calyx weren't much better, faces ashen, legs stiff. If not for Chris Hemsworth standing there like a rock, they would have fled too. After everything they had seen, Chris Hemsworth not only wasn't afraid of the old woman. He stepped closer. "Are you insane?" Calyx hissed. "Chris Hemsworth, have you lost your mind? Anyone could see it. The old woman was the killer. And very likely, not human." Chris Hemsworth ignored him. He walked to the bedside and picked up the knife and fork, examining them closely. Spotless. He brought them to his nose. Chris Hemsworth frowned and looked thoughtfully at the old woman. He leaned down and whispered into her ear, "Grandma, are you usually alone in this room?" Her lips moved. Meat. Meat, no." She repeated the words, as if mentally unstable. Chris Hemsworth narrowed his eyes. "No meat? No flavor? Bland meat?" He listened carefully. Still no third word. At that moment, Eric Church brought up a bowl of porridge. "I cooled it down. Not hot, you can drink it." The porridge smelled incredible. Rich beef aroma. Garnished with chopped scallions. Chris Hemsworth took the bowl himself, scooped up a spoonful, and brought it to the old woman's mouth. Everyone held their breath. As if afraid she would suddenly open her mouth and devour him. But it didn't happen. The old woman ate calmly. Then, she frowned. And spat it out in disgust. A chunk of beef. She continued spitting until every bit of porridge was gone. Meat, no." She repeated the words again. Chris Hemsworth leaned closer to her mouth. To everyone else, this act was sheer madness. If she truly was Diana's killer, then this was suicide. But she didn't bite him. And this reckless act gave Chris Hemsworth a crucial clue. Meat, no, familiar. The third word wasn't flavor. It was familiar. But why, meat not familiar? Chris Hemsworth tasted the beef porridge himself. It was familiar. Very familiar. After a long silence, realization struck him. He turned sharply to Eric Church. "Bearded one, quick. Cook a bowl of porridge. No meat." Eric Church was confused but obeyed. Soon, he brought up a bowl of plain white porridge. This time, the old woman ate. And she didn't spit it out. Chapter 6, Lost, Then Found Again. Everyone stared at the scene before them, utterly stunned. What was going on? She vomited after drinking beef congee, yet had no reaction at all to plain congee. After finishing the bowl, Chris Hemsworth handed it to Eric Church and stepped out of the room. "Kid, what was that just now?" Eric Church asked in a hushed, uneasy voice. Chris Hemsworth shook his head. "It's complicated. I'll explain later. By the way, where's Adolf? Only then did everyone realize, Adolf, the one who had screamed and fled downstairs earlier, was gone. Adolf! Eric Church shouted loudly. No answer came from the villa. Only a suffocating, death-like silence. A terrible premonition crept into everyone's heart. They rushed downstairs, searching every corner of the house. In the end, Chris Hemsworth stopped in front of the wide-open main gate. He looked out at the raging wind and rain and said calmly, "No need to look anymore. She ran away. She ran away." Eric Church walked closer, glancing at the torrential rain outside, shivering uncontrollably. For some reason, the same thought surfaced in everyone's mind at once, the fat man who had jumped out of the bus window, and was later skinned alive by something unknown. The task required them to care for the bedridden old woman for 5 days. If they left the villa during that time, what would happen? As Chris Hemsworth turned back toward the living hall, his gaze suddenly fell on the shoe cabinet by the door. He crouched down and began searching through it. "Kid, what are you looking for?" Eric Church hurried over. Chris Hemsworth narrowed his eyes. "There are no men's shoes." "Huh?" Chris Hemsworth's thoughts raced, faster than he himself realized. The female homeowner repeatedly mentioned that her husband was away at work. But in this house, there isn't a single pair of men's shoes. "You mean?" A sharp glint flashed through Chris Hemsworth's eyes. "There are 2 possibilities. First, her husband moved out for some reason. Second, she never had a husband at all." Eric Church frowned. "She never had a husband? That can't be right. Then what about the little girl?" Before he could finish, Chris Hemsworth looked straight at him and asked quietly, a question that sent chills down Eric Church's spine. "What makes you so sure that the girl was her daughter?" "Just because she was holding her hand." Eric Church locked eyes with him for several seconds. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He swallowed hard. "That's right. There was no proof whatsoever that the girl the woman held was actually her daughter. Let's go back first," Chris Hemsworth said after a brief pause. He glanced at the storm raging outside the door, suddenly feeling an inexplicable chill, as if something terrifying was staring straight at him from within the rain. He shut the door immediately and checked it carefully before returning to the hall with Eric Church. Everyone looked grim. The villa was huge. With 7 people inside, it had at least felt somewhat alive. Now, Diana was dead. Adolf had fled into the storm. Only 5 of them remained. "Chris Hemsworth, earlier, what exactly did that old woman say?" Calix asked, his face deathly pale. Among them, he had appeared the calmest, but only because he used to prepare corpses for funerals. He had seen far worse than most. All eyes turned toward Chris Hemsworth. He spoke plainly. "She said, the meat isn't familiar." Everyone froze. "The meat isn't familiar?" That old hag was spewing nonsense. Eric Church cursed angrily, eyes wide. "I'd know whether meat is familiar or not." His outburst strangely eased the tension a little. The bearded man was fierce, full of young energy, just enough to drive away some of the suffocating gloom. Chris Hemsworth remained unnervingly calm, as if he had witnessed horrors like this countless times before. "So those 3 words," he said slowly, "weren't 'the meat isn't familiar'?" The chatter stopped instantly. "What do you mean?" Calix frowned. Chris Hemsworth replied. "The old woman upstairs is extremely old. Her health is poor, and her mind isn't clear. She can't speak properly. And we were subconsciously influenced by Diana's death. We assumed the first 2 words she said were, 'meat isn't'. But in reality, I don't think those were the words she wanted to say." Lux let out a cold snort. "Who cares what that murderous ghost wanted to say? Didn't you all see the knife and fork beside her bed this morning? She clearly killed Diana last night. After a pause, he glanced nervously toward the second floor before lowering his voice. Maybe, the missing flesh from Diana's body was eaten by her. His words were heavy and cold. Mary screamed softly and clutched Eric Church in terror. Eric Church jumped, swearing. Lux, are you trying to tell ghost stories here? Look at you, scaring her half to death. Lux's face twisted. He rubbed his fingers together nervously. I don't want to die. And I definitely don't want to die like Diana. Didn't you see it? She was clearly eaten. It's terrifying, truly terrifying. Calyx snapped irritably. That's enough. Stop talking. Who wants to die, huh? Who? Aren't we all trying to figure this out right now? Eric Church turned his attention back to Chris Hemsworth, who was deep in thought. To be honest, Chris Hemsworth's calm demeanor gave everyone a strange sense of reassurance, quietly becoming their psychological anchor. Kid, have you figured something out? Chris Hemsworth raised his head and looked at him. I have a hypothesis. But tonight, I'll need someone brave enough to verify it with me. Combined with the horrors of the previous evening, everyone fell silent. After a long pause, Eric Church gritted his teeth. Kid, why does it have to be at night? Can't we do it during the day? Chris Hemsworth shook his head. No. Eric Church stiffened. He wanted to stay quiet, but when he met Chris Hemsworth's steady gaze, the words slipped out anyway. All right. I'll go with you. The instant he finished speaking, Eric Church wanted to slap himself. Damn it. Why couldn't he control his mouth? Good. You're coming with me tonight. Chris Hemsworth said. At that very moment, a piercing scream erupted from the second floor. No. Don't. Please. I know, Everyone broke out in goosebumps. They stared at one another, terror reflected in every pair of eyes. They knew that voice all too well. It was Adolf. The one who had just run out into the storm. Chapter 7, The Disappearing Corpse. The piercing scream lasted only a brief moment, then it was cut off completely. Chris Hemsworth was the first to rush upstairs, followed closely by Eric Church and the others. But the instant they reached the second floor, they all stopped. Shock and disbelief spread across every face. No, no way. Lux's voice trembled as his legs shook uncontrollably. The bloodstains that had once splattered across the floor were gone. Completely gone. Not a single trace remained. As if everything that had happened that morning had been nothing more than an illusion. "Elle, look!" Mary suddenly cried out, pointing toward the room at the end of the corridor. Everyone turned their heads. From beneath the door, a large pool of fresh blood was seeping out once more, stretching across the hallway. Wind howled through the wide-open window at the end of the corridor, carrying with it a thick, nauseating stench of blood. Fuck. Eric Church forced out the word, his entire body covered in goosebumps. The others looked no better. Chris Hemsworth stared at the window, frowning. He clearly remembered that earlier, after checking Diana's body, he had closed and locked that window himself. No matter how strong the wind outside was, it shouldn't have been able to open it. More importantly, that window could only be opened from the inside. After leaving the second floor, Chris Hemsworth had been watching the old woman's room closely. She hadn't come out even once. So it couldn't have been her. And at that time, all of them had been on the first floor searching for Lux. No one could have opened the window. So then. Who did? Don't tell me. Diana? The moment that thought surfaced, even Chris Hemsworth felt a chill crawl over his skin. Yet unlike the others, who shrank back in fear, he moved forward. Step by step. Toward the door where blood continued to seep out. Seeing this, the people behind him were dumbfounded. Why was Chris Hemsworth so fearless? Wasn't he afraid of what might be waiting behind that door? Chris Hemsworth, are you insane? Lux shouted. But Chris Hemsworth ignored him completely and continued walking toward the end of the corridor. Suddenly, someone rushed forward. It was Eric Church. He chased after Chris Hemsworth. Kid, wait for me. Seeing even Eric Church follow, the remaining three finally forced down their terror and clenched their teeth as they followed too. At the end of the corridor, Chris Hemsworth immediately shut the window and locked it tightly. Then, under everyone's anxious gaze, he slowly pushed open the door to the final room. The moment the door opened, Mary vomited violently. Ugh! The others staggered back half a step in horror. Inside the room, Lux's blood-soaked corpse hung suspended in midair. Her abdomen had been torn open. Her organs were gone. Only a blood-drenched spine remained. Her neck had been twisted by some external force, bent at a horrifying 90-degree angle. And on her face, that same eerie, twisted smile. Her eyes stared straight at them. No one dared to meet her gaze. Except Chris Hemsworth. He walked beneath Lux's corpse, examining it closely. The sharper his gaze became, the colder the air felt. The manner of death is almost identical to Diana's, he said quietly. Same killer. The old woman on the second floor, someone asked. Chris Hemsworth turned his head toward the old woman's room. The three words she had spoken earlier echoed in his mind. His pupils shrank. Could it be? Wait. Lux suddenly pointed behind Lux's body, screaming in panic. Do you see it? Diana's body is gone. Everyone looked over. It was true. The corpse that had once lain on the bed, had vanished. Even the bloodstains were gone. So where had her body gone? Bang! Chris Hemsworth slammed the door on the floor, he spoke calmly. Let's go downstairs first. Kalix stared at him in disbelief. Downstairs? Then what about Lux's body? Chris Hemsworth shook his head. No need to worry. It will clean it up. Those words sent chills racing down everyone's spine. As they followed him downstairs, someone asked in a trembling voice. Chris, when you say, it, who are you talking about? Without turning around, Chris Hemsworth replied. The killer. The old woman on the second floor. Chris Hemsworth didn't answer. Back in the main hall, an oppressive silence settled over them. Fear had completely swallowed them whole. Time passed slowly. When night finally fell, Eric Church could no longer endure the suffocating atmosphere. He stood up. I'll go cook. Chris Hemsworth rose as well. I'll go with you. For now, whatever you do, don't act alone. After saying that, he headed straight for the kitchen with Eric Church. Mary, however, refused to step anywhere near the kitchen. Ever since learning that the monster in the villa used kitchen cutlery to kill, she couldn't bring herself to enter. Inside the kitchen, once Eric Church confirmed no one else had followed them, he lowered his voice. Kid, tonight, are you planning to go to the third floor? Chris Hemsworth paused while taking meat from the refrigerator. Then he smiled, without turning around. Looks like you're not as stupid as you seem. Sharp old bastard. Embarrassed by the praise, Eric Church scratched his head. Kid, there's something I don't understand. Why can't we go to the third floor during the day? Why does it have to be at night? That place, it's dangerous, isn't it? Whether it was the homeowner's warning or pure instinct, everything told them. The third floor was extremely dangerous. And the heavy iron door leading up there was sealed with a thick padlock. Chris Hemsworth they didn't have searching through the fridge as he replied. It is dangerous. Especially during the day. Eric Church froze. Then realization hit him like a lightning bolt. Kid, you mean? The thing that kills people isn't the old woman on the second floor. It's on the third floor. During the day, it rests up there. At night, it comes out to hunt. Chris Hemsworth nodded faintly. Exactly. The old woman is most likely just bait. Prey used by that thing to lure victims into the villa. And I have a very bad suspicion. But I'll need tonight to confirm it. Chapter 8, Hairy Meat. Chris Hemsworth was speaking when he suddenly noticed something off. After rummaging around for a moment, he pulled several pieces of meat from the refrigerator. They were vacuum sealed. No labels. No markings. Inside, there were dark shapes. But the frost was too thick to see clearly what they were. So Chris Hemsworth handed one packet to Eric Church beside him. Cut it open. Eric Church took the knife and sliced into the plastic, then froze. Fuck. He stared at the meat through the torn seal, unable to stop the curse from slipping out. The slab inside was covered in thick hair. Judging by where the hair grew, it looked like part of a leg. A human leg. The thing in this bag, Eric Church's voice shook. Is this human meat? Terrified, he flung the packet away. The frozen meat hit the floor with a sharp, brittle clang. In an instant, he remembered the meat they had eaten earlier, and began retching uncontrollably. Eric Church knew what he'd eaten before was beef. But the nausea wouldn't go away. Chris Hemsworth picked up the fallen meat, examined it carefully, then placed it into a bag. I think I know why the old woman on the second floor doesn't eat meat. Eric Church, face pale, fought back his nausea. Why? Chris Hemsworth spoke slowly. Because before we arrived, someone fed her this. That gave her a severe psychological trauma related to meat. And don't you find it strange? Eric Church frowned. What's strange? After wrapping the meat, Chris Hemsworth put it back into the fridge. That old woman is clearly paralyzed. Yet her room's windows are nailed shut with steel bars, like they're afraid she'll escape. Eric Church thought about it carefully. And then, a chill ran down his spine, as if he had just grasped something horrifying. You mean, her paralysis? Chris Hemsworth's gaze sharpened. He nodded. Very likely. But that's not the scariest part. The truly terrifying thing is still ahead. With that, he took out a pack of lamb and tossed it to Eric Church. There's something even worse. Eric Church caught it, his face deathly pale. Chris Hemsworth frowned. Didn't you notice? This family doesn't have a single photograph. Eric Church paused mid-cut. That's right. The little girl the female homeowner had been holding hands with before had looked at least 8 or 9 years old. After so many years, even if the husband and wife had divorced, there should have been photos, of the woman and her daughter at the very least. But in reality, neither the first nor the second floor had a single photo. Not of the woman. Not of the girl. Not even of the old woman upstairs. Why? And if I didn't see wrong, Chris Hemsworth continued, then suddenly stopped. He shook his head. Never mind. Let's cook first. So many questions. I think tonight, we'll get our answers. Seeing that Chris Hemsworth didn't want to say more, Eric Church didn't press further. But he couldn't help stealing glances at him. This man was too strange. Whether it was seeing the fat man's human skin earlier, or facing the endless bizarre events beyond the blood gate, Chris Hemsworth had never truly panicked. If anything, he was frighteningly calm. In over 30 years, Eric Church had never seen someone with such terrifying psychological stability. Was he really just a veterinarian in the outside world? Eric Church found himself growing curious about Chris Hemsworth. Dinner. Everyone sat at the table in silence. Eric Church, why aren't you eating any vegetables? Calix noticed sharply that the chef had only scooped himself some plain porridge, and hadn't touched the vegetables at all. But Eric Church didn't even lift his chopsticks toward it. He'd pushed the lamb as far away from himself as possible. Huh? Vegetables? Oh, right, vegetables. My stomach hurts a bit. His excuse was vague. His face was ashen. Neither he nor Chris Hemsworth told the others about the human meat in the fridge. After all, 2 people were already dead. Everyone was jumpy as it was. Telling them now would only deepen the fear. Besides, even if they knew, it wouldn't help them survive. Their mission was to care for the elderly person in the villa for 5 days. That meant they had to stay here for 5 full days. After dinner, a new problem arose: where to arrange Mary. With the 2 girls dead, Mary was now the only woman left in the group. Could they really let her sleep alone in a room? I don't want to sleep by myself. Mary's voice trembled, tears welling up. Was this a joke? Sleeping alone in a place like this? That was no different from a death sentence. Compared to survival, concerns about propriety meant nothing to her now. Then, you sleep with us tonight, Luck said. The 2 of us will take the sofa. You take the bed. Calyx had no objections. After all, their numbers were dwindling. The fewer people remained, the more dangerous it became for those still alive. Mary nodded, gratitude shining in her eyes. Watching this, Chris Hemsworth quietly shook his head. He knew that if the ghost hiding in the villa truly wanted to kill, even 100 people huddled together wouldn't matter. When he saw everyone looking slightly better, he finally spoke. It's late. Get some rest. Oh, and check the doors. Make sure everything is locked. After today, we only have 3 days left before we can leave. Everyone nodded. They turned off the lights on the first floor. Chris Hemsworth went upstairs with them, watched as everyone entered their rooms, then reached out and switched off the hallway stairs. Normally, lights in places like this were designed with 2-way switches, one end on, the other off, for convenience. But for some reason, the second-floor hallway had a single switch. When it went dark, the entire villa was swallowed by darkness. A shiver crawled over Chris Hemsworth's skin. He turned to head back to his room. Then he heard it. A faint sound from not far behind him. It wasn't loud. But in the dead silence, it was unmistakably clear. It was the sound of the iron lock leading to the 3rd floor. Being opened. Chris Hemsworth's body stiffened. Upstairs. Something seemed to be coming down. And it was. Right behind him. Chapter 9, Going Upstairs. In that instant, Chris Hemsworth felt as if every cell in his body had frozen solid. Scrape. Scrape. The cold sound of metal grinding against metal came from behind him, sending his scalp close to exploding. It was the sound of knives and forks scraping together. Right behind him. And, getting closer. At the same time, the ventilation window ahead was suddenly blown open by the wind. Icy air, carrying a thick stench of blood, rushed in again and again, stabbing into Chris Hemsworth's nose and lungs. Fear spread through his entire body. Was he about to die? In that moment, an indescribable terror crashed down on him like a tidal wave, drowning him completely. He raised his hand instinctively, reaching for the light switch. Light. He needed light. Only light could drive away this terrifying darkness. But just as his fingers were about to touch the switch, Chris Hemsworth stopped abruptly. A fragment of the mysterious letter he had received earlier suddenly surfaced in his mind. The wind does not light lamps, the rain does not light candles. In daylight, do not go upstairs, at night, do not close your eyes. The wind does not light lamps. Gritting his teeth, Chris Hemsworth endured the overwhelming fear clawing at his heart and did not turn on the light. He pulled his hand back and, step by step, forced himself forward through the cold wind reeking of blood, moving down the hallway. The terrifying metal scraping seemed to ring right beside his ears, relentlessly tormenting his nerves. As if whatever was behind him could at any moment plunge those sharp knives and forks into his body, tearing him apart. Chris Hemsworth took a deep breath, gathered every ounce of courage he had, clenched his fists, ignored the dreadful sound behind him, and kept walking. He was gambling. Gambling that he hadn't triggered a death condition. Gambling that whatever was behind him could not touch him. 2 steps. At this moment, his adrenaline surged to its absolute limit. Every step was a brutal trial for his mind. But he didn't dare to run. He couldn't run. The wind was freezing, piercing through skin and flesh, straight into muscle and bone. His entire body stiffened. Fortunately, Chris Hemsworth had gambled correctly. The terrifying presence behind him seemed to be restrained by something, unable to harm him. When he finally reached his room door and grabbed the handle, the shrill sound of metal scraping behind him vanished abruptly. The blood-stained wind in the hallway gradually died down. By the faint moonlight, Chris Hemsworth saw that the shutter at the end of the corridor, at some point unknown, had been tightly closed. Just a hallucination. He panted heavily, eyes slightly narrowed. The bone-chilling cold at his back slowly faded, as if whatever had followed him all this time had finally left. His mind felt completely blank. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, only then realizing his clothes were soaked through with sweat. In the darkness, Eric Church's low voice sounded, tinged with fear. "Brother, are you okay?" Clearly, he had also heard the horrifying metal scraping in the hallway. Chris Hemsworth shook his head. "I'm fine." Eric Church stepped closer, groping for Chris Hemsworth's arm in the dark. Only after confirming the warmth of a living body did he let out a long breath, admiration in his voice. "Brother, you're seriously incredible. I really thought you wouldn't make it back." Just now, out there in the hallway, was there something? Chris Hemsworth nodded. It appeared. Eric Church's eyes widened in disbelief. It didn't kill you." Chris Hemsworth was silent for a moment before speaking. "It can't kill us at will. Only when we trigger a death condition everything that had happened." Countless emotions surged through Eric Church's chest. "Then, do you know what the death conditions are?" Chris Hemsworth lowered his voice. "I know part of them. I've already told you. But that's not all of them. How many there really are, only it knows. What we need to do now is uncover the truth as quickly as possible." Eric Church's breathing grew rapid. "But even if we know the truth, it won't help much with surviving, right?" Chris Hemsworth fell silent again. "The truth should come with a way to deal with it. Do you remember what the man in the suit told us before? The world behind the blood gate has more than one path to survival. It looks dangerous, but it's not impossible to fight back. And the woman in the red dress warned us not to enter the 3rd floor of the villa. That place is probably crucial." Eric Church's gaze wavered. Finally, he clenched his teeth. "All right. When you say go, I'll go with you. At worst, we die together, at least we won't be alone." Chris Hemsworth said. "Wait." The two of them waited in the room for a long time. Until midnight, when the hair-raising sound of metal scraping echoed once more in the hallway outside the door. They both knew. It was the sound of knives and forks grinding together. Whatever was on the 3rd floor had come down to feed again. This time. Who would it be? Scrape. Scrape. The sound drew closer and closer, and Eric Church's heart pounded faster and faster. He glanced at Chris Hemsworth sitting beside him. And saw that he was drinking tea. Eric Church froze. Then, once again, admiration filled his eyes. "Brother, in a situation like this, being able to calmly drink tea, you're the first person I've ever seen." He lowered his voice to the barest whisper. Chris Hemsworth set the teacup down. "I'm nervous too. Everyone shows nervousness differently. When I'm nervous, I like to eat or drink something." His voice was steady, so steady there wasn't the slightest tremor. Outside the door. The horrifying sound stopped once more, right in front of their room. The knives and forks scraped together again and again, as if a starving demon stood outside, staring at them with greedy hunger. Eric Church felt useless, his palms drenched in sweat. He was truly terrified. Terrified that the thing outside would burst in. But fortunately, what he feared did not happen. The demon lingered outside their door for a while. Seemingly realizing it couldn't do anything to them, it shifted its target to another room. This time, just like last night, that sound disappeared in front of the neighboring door. About 5 minutes later, Chris Hemsworth pressed his ear to the door. Hearing nothing, he gently pushed it open a crack. After observing for a while, he opened it wider, sticking half his head out, scanning the silent, pitch-dark hallway to the left and right. Aside from the open ventilation window at the end of the corridor and the cold wind blowing through, there was nothing else. This is the moment. Go. Chris Hemsworth beckoned to Eric Church. The two slipped out quietly, moving cautiously through the darkness, heading toward the staircase. Chapter 10, The Mystery of the Third Floor. The two of them reached the top of the stairs. The iron door leading to the third floor had been forced open. A suffocating stench rushed straight into their faces, the exact same smell as the droplets that had fallen into their room. The smell of rotting corpses. Eric Church clamped a hand over his nose and frowned. His stomach churned violently. Swallowing hard, he forced the nausea down and followed Chris Hemsworth up to the third floor. The moment his foot touched the floor above, the stench grew even thicker. Eric Church couldn't endure it any longer. His stomach spasmed violently. His knees buckled, and he dropped to the floor, retching uncontrollably. Ugh! His face turned deathly pale as he vomited. Chris Hemsworth stepped forward and lightly patted his back. Only after emptying everything in his stomach did Eric Church feel slightly better. The two moved forward along the pitch-black corridor. The floor beneath their feet felt strangely slick. Even without light, Eric Church could guess what that sticky substance was. It was decomposition fluid from corpses. The entire third floor was flooded with this disgusting, viscous liquid. Both of them felt a chill run through their bones. How many bodies would it take to produce enough decomposition fluid to coat an entire floor like this? As expected, Chris Hemsworth narrowed his eyes. The stench made him uncomfortable, but not nauseous like Eric Church. Before coming up here, he had already guessed part of what they would find. Stepping through the revolting sludge, they stopped in front of the room where the smell was strongest. Chris Hemsworth slowly pushed the door open. The scene inside made both of them freeze in shock. Bathed in dim moonlight, the room was piled high with corpses. Some bodies were relatively fresh, flesh torn and soaked in blood. Others had long since decayed, reduced to dry skeletons. One thing in common. Their heads were intact. And every single face wore a twisted, unnatural smile, staring straight at them, as if inviting them inside. Stay calm. Eric Church covered his mouth and staggered back a step, his whole body trembling. He turned to look at the other rooms, as if realizing something. With shaking hands, he pushed open the remaining doors. My God, he whispered in horror. As expected, every single room was packed with corpses. Their internal organs had all been ripped out. Their bodies were covered in dense knife marks, clear proof that something had eaten them. Among the dead were the bodies of Diana and Lux. Eric Church leaned against the wall, slid down slowly, and sat on the floor. His face was whiter than paper. So, the decomposition fluid dripping from the ceiling of our room came from here. But, why are there so many bodies? Could it be? Chris Hemsworth looked out through the window, toward the villa district swallowed by darkness. Perhaps, every resident of this entire neighborhood is here. Eric Church swallowed hard, cold sweat pouring down his back. The monster hiding in this villa. Had it eaten everyone who once lived here? Maybe we're not the first group to be sent here to take care of the old woman, Chris Hemsworth continued calmly. There are so many rooms downstairs, all separated neatly. They were probably meant for previous caretakers. Every word made Eric Church's heart pound harder. Brother, maybe we should get out of here. Now. If it comes back, we. He didn't finish the sentence, but Chris Hemsworth understood. The truth is almost clear now. Beard face. Don't you want to know what it is that ate everyone in this villa? Eric Church froze, then let out a bitter laugh. Brother. I've realized something. You really aren't afraid of death. Is the truth more important than staying alive? If we leave now, are you sure we can actually get out of this villa? Out of this neighborhood? Who knows how many other killing rules it still has? Maybe the moment we stepped into this villa, we already triggered its killing condition. We've just been lucky, it hasn't been our turn yet. And right now, it has gone downstairs to hunt. There's a good chance it's very close to us. The more people die, the more dangerous things become for those still alive. Eric Church fell silent, his expression heavy. At last, he clenched his teeth. All right. I trust you. They stepped past the rooms filled with corpses and reached the innermost room. It was a study. The doorway was clean, no bloodstains at all. It looked painfully out of place amid the death-soaked third floor. They exchanged a glance, eyes lighting up. This might be it. They opened the door carefully. A wave of dusty, stale air rushed out. The room was small. Inside lay a skeleton, long since decayed. Judging by its size and structure, it belonged to a girl of about 14 or 15. The skeleton cradled a small teddy bear in its arms. The bear's button eyes were pitch black, as if staring straight at them. Chris Hemsworth stepped closer, examining the skeleton carefully. This girl wasn't eaten. The ribs, the chest bones, the neck, there are no knife marks at all. Earlier, when examining the bodies of Diana and Lux, he had noticed that although their organs and flesh had been eaten, clear knife marks remained on their bones. But this skeleton had none. Not eaten. Then how did she die? Eric Church asked, even more confused. Chris Hemsworth studied the skeleton for a long time. Most likely, starvation or dehydration. That thing probably couldn't enter this room. But the girl couldn't get out either. She was trapped here. No food. No water. Most people would die within steel bars, completely rusted over. That means they were installed a long time ago. Maybe when she was younger, her family was afraid she'd climb out and fall, so they put those bars in. But they never imagined that those very bars would become the last thing to steal her hope of survival. A deep chill crept up Eric Church's spine. He could almost picture the girl's despair. Outside the room was a man-eating monster. Inside was a sealed prison. In the end, she could only die, slowly, hopelessly, in this very room. Hey, brother. Eric Church's voice trembled. Look, behind her. There seems to be something there.